Hello and good evening, everyone. Okay, so today we are going to start a very important topic, not for this exam only, for any exam at regulatory body level or even UPSC level, including the interview. That is one of the topic they do ask questions in the mains, in the prelims part about UPSC in the interview. Similarly, in your regulatory body exam like NABARD, SEBI, RBI, everywhere the question is supposed to be come from this topic, whether at what level they are, tier 1 or tier 2 or even in the interview, right? Inflation. Okay. Sorry dear, it is not a bilingual session, it's a English only session. So, inflation. Inflation is defined as price rise, right? In a very simple term, it is defined as what? It is defined as price rise. So the price rise we called in economics as a inflation, right? So this price rise can be there because of basically three things, right? One is demand, other is supply. Third one, can anyone guess price rise apart from demand and supply factor? Anyone can guess? Inflation is defined as price rise, and that price rise because of demand or supply or what? Anyone? No answer till then now. Cost. What is cost? I'll explain. Right. So that is why sometimes it is known as demand pulled inflation, supply pushed inflation, cost pushed inflation. Right. So they do define inflation because of demand, sometimes because of supply, sometimes because of cost generated factors. Right. So these are three basic element which causes inflation, or in other words, that is price rise. Right. So first, try to understand what are the demand pull factors, what are the supply push factors, then cost push factors, what are they? Then you will get a broader idea, a proper idea about the inflation, right? So, price of a good or services. So, demand. Sudden rise in the demand. Any sudden rise in the demand will push the price, right? If there is all of sudden demand is rising, for example, during the festive season, right? During the festive season, people will go for like Hindu festival like Deepavali, right? So Dhanteras, right? Maybe people who are having very less amount of income and they are not able to purchase the gold coin or silver coin, even then they are going to purchase some utensils for the house. Like let's purchase a pressure cooker or karai kind of the thing, but they will go for purchasing. It's a day Dhanteras. So during that time, the demand for these gold, silver, and related things are going to rise. Similarly, automobile sector in India, they always hope for very good sale during that season, right? So demand is going to rise, like in during the Navaratras, right? The demand of fruit, right? The price of fruits like banana and other things are going to rise. बहुत ज़्यादा इसकी कीमतें बढ़ जाती हैं. Why? Because there is an excessive demand during that phase. So sometimes demand is going to push the price, and then it is known as what? Demand pulled inflation. Demand has pulled the inflation. It is known as demand pulled inflation. Means supply was normal. Like supply was as earlier. Like if it is supply and it is demand, right? So before the Navratris and after the Navratris, before the Navratris and during the Navratris, like this is before situation, and that is during, right? During that time. So supplies remain same, but demand increased too much. Even even people who anticipate, those who are involved in the supply of fruits and related things which are being used during the vrat, right, during the fast, then they know that ki Navratris are about to come and there is will be a demand, right? There will be a demand, so we have to increase those production. So even they are trying to increase the supply, but because of the demand is going to rise in such a high manner, the difference between demand and supply is going to be very much, and this is going to cause a rise in the price. Whereas before that thing, no, not many people are going for fasting during that time. This was the difference between demand and supply. But during that time, the demand supply gap, even supply is rising during that time, but the gap between demand and supply is going to rise too much, and that is going to cause sudden rise in the price, right? So we can say that ki this is a price rise because of excessive demand, right? Excessive demand in the economy. So we will call it as a price rise, but inflation because of demand factor. So demand factor is working here, and because of that demand factor, prices are rising. Fine. So inflation because of demand. Now the supply side, like every year, like we are seeing monsoon season right now, right? In India, monsoon start from here. This is southwest monsoon, right? This is southwest monsoon, and this monsoon enters from the Bay of Bengal. Fine. So these monsoon are warm currents. These monsoon are warm currents, right? They are coming here, India, from Indian Ocean, right? So sometimes what happen in ocean, there is a effect known as El Nino effect, and that El Nino effect starts from South American belt, and from there it starts moving towards the Pacific Ocean to Indian Ocean, right? It starts in Pacific Ocean but starts moving from Pacific Ocean to Indian Ocean. And what is the effect of that current? That effect is going to make warm current into the cold current into the warm current. So that effect is moving from this side, and the monsoon waves are moving towards the India. So sometimes there is a possibility of superimposing both. El Nino and monsoon waves are going to superimpose. If they are going to superimpose means, suppose this is monsoon is moving and this is El Nino is moving, right? So major part of monsoon waves are going to overlap with El Nino. Then that warm currents are going to convert it into the cold current, right? And if they are going to be converted into the cold current, there will be deficit in the monsoon, right? There will be deficit in the monsoon. Now you can ask, sir, why we are studying geography here? I'll tell you the reason. Geography is important, and even RBI is very concerned about this factor, right? RBI get very tense or concerned during the month of March, April, and May. These are the 3 months where the meteorological department data is closely observed by the Reserve Bank of India. Not only India's meteorological department, but in fact, all the ASEAN countries' meteorological department data is collected by the Reserve Bank of India in order to have a close eye on the monsoon. Right. So this is why I'm telling you. So if it is going to have a superimposing, right, El Nino and this monsoon waves are going to have a kind of superimposing, then there will be deficit in the monsoon. And if there is a deficit in the monsoon, that means less rain in India. That means the agriculture production is going to decrease, right? The supply of food, grain, vegetables, fruit items are going to what? Decrease, right? But because your population is still there, demand is still there, but production is going to what? Decrease. Production is going to decrease, and this decrease in the production is going to increase the price. And this time, the rise in the price is not because of unnecessary or increasing the demand, but because of decreasing in the supply. So inflation is going to be there. So RBI is going to anticipate, right? Suppose that ki meteorological department data is showing that ki there is going to be a bigger El Nino effect this time. That means monsoon deficit. Monsoon deficit means rise in the price. Inflation is going to increase, and RBI have a responsibility to control the inflation in the economy. So RBI will start preparing a policy things so that they can tame the inflation or control the inflation. This is why RBI have a close eye on the meteorological department data, right? So this time inflation is because of what? Supply side. So this is what we called it as a supply generated inflation or inflation because of supply, right? Supply is responsible, right? So just right now I'm giving a basic fundamental, then I'll come to the present situation also, right? I'll give you the example with related to the present situation, but just get an idea, basic idea about the inflation. What are the possible fundamental reasons for the inflation, right? So fundamental inflation, first is demand side, other is supply side, third is cost side, right? So there are certain industries like iron and steel and energy sources like petrol, diesel, gas, iron and steel. So these are considered as a mother industries. Why? Because they are involved in all of the sectors, right? So if there is a price rise, if there is a significant price rise, suppose in energy prices are going to rise too much, right? Energy prices are going to rise too much, and that rise in the energy prices, rise in the price of steel and cement too much, what is going to create? It is going to increase the cost of production at very high level, right? The cost of production in every sector is going to be rise, from the auto rickshaw puller to gig workers like Swiggy, Zomato, all these things. They from every sector is going to see the rise in the cost of their production, right? So production cost is going to be significantly rise, and because of rise of the production cost, they are going to hike their price. They will hike their price because of the rise in the production cost. Like I'll give you the one example. Uh, just a month back, means I regularly go with my personal vehicle, but because of some reason I prefer to go by the Ola and Uber. Right. So that working place is just 2.5 kilometers away from my place. So I prefer to go by the auto rickshaw. Right. So auto rickshaw, the cost somewhere around 90 rupees to 100 rupees. So they are not accepting. So very means one, two, three times, four times I'll try, but they are not accepting. So anyhow, that guy has accepted the request, and while boarding and going there, I just start casually asking कि भैया क्या बात है आप लोग क्यों नहीं लेते हो means is there any issue because कि every time I am going to select the Google Pay option and you people want cash is the reason आपका ये reason है क्या कि इसलिए आप लोग accept नहीं करते. So he said that no sir, this is not an issue. The issue is these companies are giving less amount of money, right? So we just go for this Ola and Uber only when we are not able to find the normal customer. Only then we will go for it. Otherwise, we will not go for it. And telling you very honestly, I am at that place since half an hour, and I was not getting any sawari, means any kind of the customer. And all of a sudden, I have just switched on the Uber, and you was requesting, and I accepted that request. So if your request, suppose even while coming to your place, if I got any sawari, means any customer, I am going to reject that request. So I said why? Because I feel that ki 100 rupees is okay for that kind of 2.5 kilometer or 3 kilometer distance. He said no, everything is rising and our cost of gas and other things are rising. So we are not able to survive. That's why we need more money. So because of rise in the price of gas, petrol and diesel, all other things are also going to realize. At that moment, I realized that ki this is the cost pushed inflation. So, so I taste this thing. Ki, okay, this is the cost push inflation. Restaurants are also raising the price, right? Increasing the price of their product, whether it is biryani or any other thing. So slowly, gradually, that price was somewhere around 289. They have increased to 299, and I usually order from that particular place. So I said, what happened? Why you have increased the price? अरे सर, सारी चीजों का दाम बढ़ रहा है. आई सेड ओके, सारी चीजों का दाम बढ़ रहा है तो इसका मतलब आप भी थोड़ी ना बढ़ा दोगे. आपके ऊपर क्या इम्पैक्ट पड़ रहा है? अरे सर, LPG is going to costly, milk is going to be costly, this is going to be costly, this is going to be costly. So I have to bear the burden. That's why I have increased the price. So sometimes these factors, the cost factor is a reason for increase in the price, then we will call it as a cost pushed inflation, right? Got this basic idea about the price rise, inflation due to rise in the demand, inflation due to rise in the decrease in the supply, or inflation due to rise in the cost. Got this idea? Any doubt? If you have any doubt, please let me know. 8 9 people are there in the live chat, but I am not getting any response. Any reason? Rajan, cost push inflation in short, could you repeat it once? Rise in the price of goods and services which are meant for production activity, like basic goods, petrol, diesel, energy products like petrol, diesel, and some basic fundamental things like cement, steel. If the price are going to rise in that, then that is going to trigger the further price rise. Again, another example, milk. If the price of milk is going to rise, then all related things, right? Curd, paneer, sweets, all the price of these products are also going to rise. Even the tea seller is going to increase the price there. So there are some basic fundamental goods. If the price is going to rise in those particular goods, it is going to cause a further price rise. Where we can find your master notes for non-enrolled students? Mike, I do not have. In fact, I'll tell you very honestly, even my enrolled student didn't get my notes, and I feel very regret for that. So whatever is here only. There is nothing like a master notes kind of the thing. So demand, supply, and cost. Right. Now, Impact of inflation. Impact of inflation. And those price rise like in milk could have been possible because of the supply and demand. Supply and demand, or is there any other factor? No, supply and demand only. Demand, we put it in that way only, right? Whatever the reason, we are going to classify in that way in order to get that thing in the bigger way. See, if the price of a particular good is rising, right? For example, right now is a monsoon season. Okay, so the things which are going to be available in the winter season, right, they are the seasonal thing. If that seasonal thing of the winter season and you are going to purchase it right now, because of unavailability of that particular thing, the price is very high, right? Price is going to be very high, like green pea, hari matar. So if you are going to purchase the hari matar, the green pea from the market, it is going to be somewhere around maybe 200 rupees per kg. If it is available, the green pea, proper green pea, not that of Safal and other packaged one, no, the proper green pea, it is going to be available like 200 rupees or 300 rupees per kg. So price is very high, but it is not just a particular good. We also have to go for the basket of the goods. General price rise, right? The word general price rise must be there, right? So general price rise. So in that context, when we go for the general price rise, we will go for the demand kind of the thing, supply kind of the thing, or the cost kind of the thing. Okay. Now, the impact of inflation. How inflation impact? Before going further, impact of inflation, just because most of the time when we discuss the inflation, people take it as a negative only. Inflation is going to impact only in the bad way. Okay. But in economics, inflation is like a necessary evil. It is a necessary evil. Yes, have a evil tendency means it is going to create a lot of problem, but it must be there. It must be there. Means price rise will be there. Price rise must be there, but it should not increase it too much. Now the question arises, why it is required? Why it is required? Right. So first understand briefly, try to understand the business cycle in very brief way. Like if price will rise, but not very much. Means suppose 2 to 4% or even 6% price rise. Okay. So price increased, but not too much. So the people who are involved in the production activity, they saw that there is a rise in the price, right? There is a rise in the price. That means if they will increase the production, then two things are possible. Price is rising. If they are going to increase the production, maybe because of too much price rise, people's ability to purchase is going to decrease. But if price are rising slightly, right, slightly, then people's purchasing ability is not going to decrease, right, because there is a slight increase in the price, right? Why they think so? Why they think so, I'll explain. But they convinced ki if the price is going to rise slightly, then people's ability is not going to decrease. Ability of what? Ability to purchase the goods. So that is why we must increase the production. I'll tell you why they will go for increase the production. But when they saw that there is a slight increase in the price, they have increased their production. They want to increase the production. And in order to increase the production, they need more raw material, right? Machines and labors. So they want to increase the production, and in order to increase the production they need more land, labor and capital, and that is going to increase employment. That is going to increase what? That is going to increase employment, right? And that rise in the employment is further going to increase what? Income. Any rise in the income will provide an opportunity, consume and save. So rise in the income means rise in the consumption and rise in the savings. Savings are going to be converted in investments if they are being deposited in the bank or invested in the financial market. So they are going to create an investment. So when this production side, the production side want to increase the production, they want what? Land, labor, capital. And to get the land, labor and capital, they want what? Investments. So that investments go this side. So this investments are going to provide them capital, so that capital can be used for hiring more laborers, land and machines. Fine. So these investments are going to trigger this thing, whereas rise in the consumption was a reason why this production side have taken a calculated risk. Okay, prices are rising but rising slightly, definitely people's ability to purchase is going to further rise. So with this this calculation, they have increased the production. So you can see here, if there is a slight rise in the price, then production, employment, income, consumption, savings, investments, each and everything is going to move upwards, right? It is going to move upwards. So this is why in general inflation is required for rise in, please listen to this statement very carefully. A general inflation, but what we say the general inflation here means a slight rise in the price, maybe from 2 to 6% in between. That price rise is going to trigger further increase in employment, income, consumption, savings, investments, right? Means effectively GDP, employment, tax receipts of the government is going to rise, right? So all these things are going to rise, and it is a good symbol for a growing economy or developing economy moving in the right direction. So this is why inflation is required. Inflation is required, right? But if that inflation is going to cross the limit, it is going to create a reverse effect. If the price are going to rise too much, right? If the price are going to rise too much, the people's ability to purchase is going to what? Decrease, right? Their ability to save is going to decrease. If the ability to save is going to decrease, the ability to invest is also going to decrease, and that investments are not able to be further converted into what? The capital formation in the country. So this is why inflation, if it is going to be uncontrolled, it is going to create a very big problem for the country. Fine. But if inflation is going to be there and under control, it is going to provide a good opportunity for any economy to grow further. Right. So that is why we need inflation, but at the same time, we always want to make that inflation under control. Understood? Any doubt? If any doubt, let me know. Now, so inflation is very crucial, right? Inflation is very crucial, and I just explained how it is very important to put under control. Put it under the control, right? So inflation must be under the control. Okay. So Now who is going to put that thing under control? Who is going to put that thing under the control? So ultimately the responsibility of a country is on whom? Government. Government is the responsible for a country, and any problem or anything which is significant, important for country's development, it must be taken care by whom? Government. So now here the option is either government can control inflation directly, or through some independent agency. Either they can control directly, they can control inflation, or they need some agency, and I have specifically mentioned independent. I can mention a government agency, but I have mentioned the term independent government agency, and there is a reason for the independent government agency. But the first question arises, why government do not control the inflation directly? And if you are able to understand, or if you know this, why government do not control inflation directly, then automatically you will know that why there is a need of independent agency, right? So the thing is, if can you answer why government do not control inflation directly on its own? Anyone want to answer this question, why government do not control inflation directly on its own? Any answer? No answer. Why government do not control inflation directly on its own? No answer. Okay. Even nobody want to try? Acha, okay. I'll answer. I have to answer. So I said inflation is because of three things: demand, supply, or cost side, right? And other thing I told that ki inflation is necessary evil, right? Now just have another look on the demand factor, supply factor, and the cost factor, right? Government, right? Government is going to control this inflation, right? Government is going to control this inflation, and government know that that inflation is because of any of these three reasons, right? This inflation is because of any these three reason: demand reason, supply reason, and cost reason. Demand reason means all of sudden rise in the demand, right? Rise in the demand. And if we want to tame the inflation or bring down that inflation, what we have to do? We have to decrease the price or people's ability to purchase, right? So if we are going to decrease the people's ability to purchase, automatically the inflation, which is because of demand, it is going to what? Decrease, right? It is going to decrease. So what government have to do? Government have to control people's ability to purchase. People's ability to purchase, it must be controlled, right? Control the people's ability to purchase, then automatically you can control the demand pull inflation. When inflation is going to too low, you can increase the people's ability to purchase, right? When the people's ability to purchase is going to be very high, then you have to bring down that ability, inflation will be controlled, right? And people's ability to purchase means money with them, right? Money with them. What? And here, if anyone who is going to appear in any interview, especially the RBI interview, right? If you are going to appear in the RBI interview and one obvious question, ki why RBI is required, why there is a need of a central bank. In general question also, and for the interview people also, ki why government need a central bank, this answer is also going to be here only. And answer why government do not control the inflation, why government has given this task. So all of these questions are going to be answered here only right now. Okay. So money with the people is going to give them ability to purchase, and if that ability is going to be controlled by the government, then government is going to effectively control the demand pull inflation, right? Now same thing for the supply also. Government want to control inflation which is caused due to supply related issues, right? So if supply is going to decrease, price rise are going to high, so what government have to do? Government have to increase the supply, or any government agency who is looking this job, they have to increase the supply. But the problem with the supply side is what? The supply side problem is supply means production. It cannot be increase or decrease spontaneously. It takes time, right? It takes time for the production, then its movement from the factories to the wholesale market, from wholesale market to retail market. So it's a time taking process. Production cannot be swiftly increase or decrease, right? It's not quite possible. So in general, it is a time taking process to control the supply side inflation, right? Supply side inflation takes some time to control it, right? uh, Keep this point in your mind, we cannot easily change the supply side, we cannot easily change the supply side, right? Same problem with the cost also. Same problem with the cost side also, you cannot easily change in the short span of time. So if you will compare all these three, demand generated inflation, supply side inflation, cost side inflation, it is only demand side inflation can be controlled in a short span of time by increasing or decreasing the supply of money, right? This is why when after the COVID, when government have went for the lockdown was on lockdown phase, and all of a sudden inflation start rising, right? So inflation start rising despite governments all over the world try to ramp up their production, but still inflation is rising. And when inflation starts rising, first task was what? Tame the inflation by decreasing the money supply in the economy. Whether it is India or US or any part of the world, central bank came into the picture and they started decreasing the money supply in the economy, right? So just want to give you the graphical presentation in that way. This is supply, right? This is supply, and this is demand, right? This is demand, and because of this gap, this is the level of inflation. And we know that we cannot all of a sudden increase the supply. We know that it is not possible to increase the supply all of a sudden, or even in a month or in a 2 month, it is not possible to all of a sudden increase the supply. Then what should be done in order to control the inflation? The best thing is what? The best thing is you have to cut down this ability to purchase. You have to cut down the ability to what? purchase. Then if you will cut down the ability to purchase and this is the new level of the demand, then the price or the inflation is going to be at this level, which was earlier at this level. So even if inflation is rising, majorly because of less supply in the economy or the cost push inflation in the economy, the first preventive measure or first curative measure for this inflation is what? To cut down the supply of money in the economy in order to make an immediate control on what? Inflation, right? So money supply. So now money supply is an effective tool or immediate effective tool to tame down the inflation immediately. I'm not saying it's a permanent solution, but I'm saying that कि yes, it is an effective immediate solution, right? किसी को भी चोट लगती है तो सबसे पहले लोग क्या बोलते हैं? पानी पिलाओ. Give some water. Give some water. So at least the throat should not be dry, right? It should not be dry. So what is the spontaneous reaction? The spontaneous reaction is to go for tame the demand. Tame the demand, right? And to tame the demand, we have to look over what? Supply of money in the economy. Tame down the supply of money in the economy. Okay. So this is why the demand side inflation is very important, or money supply. When we have to control what? Inflation, this money supply play a very important or significant role. Money supply play a very important or significant role for what? Control the inflation, right? Control the inflation. Fine. Now, get back to the fundamental question. The fundamental question was here: government can control inflation directly. Government can control the inflation through independent agency. Now, in other words, we can say that, see, here I have clearly explained you ki how inflation can be immediately controlled with what? Money supply. How money supply is going to increase or decrease the level of inflation, right? So, if inflation can be controlled with the money supply, then this question is equally valid, which is valid for the inflation. Government can control the inflation directly. Government can control money supply directly. Government can control money supply not directly, but through some independent agency, right? So the fundamental question came here, like inflation and money supply. Why inflation and money supply is correlated, I explained you, right? Now question is, why government do not control the money supply directly? In fact, in India, before the inception of the Reserve Bank of India in 1935, it was government. Before inception of Reserve Bank of India in our country, it was government which was controlling the money supply itself. Government was controlling the money supply itself, right? Government was controlling the money supply itself, but even government realized that it is not a right thing to control the money supply on its own. That is the thing when India was having a kind of government which is not answerable to the people of this country. Try to understand the severity of the issue. There was a government at that point of time before 1935 which is not supposed to answer to the public of India. Whatever they are doing, they are like, this is the decision we have taken and we are not supposed to answer Indian public. Why we have taken this decision? They are answerable to British Queen only, British Parliament only, not to goddamn Indians, right? No. They are answerable to only British Parliament, British government, British Queen, not any Indian. Even then, they decided that enough is enough, that should be controlled by independent authority, not by the government itself. Now, what is the problem? Why they did that? The problem is money itself, right? The problem is money itself. If you are going to control the money, right, the supply of money, and at the same time you are the person who is going to spend that money, raise that money, then the conflict of interest will come, and which is going to result in the disaster. That disaster happened in India, especially during 1922 onwards. That problem starts developing, and by 1928 it is realized that it is a very big problem. We should not control the currency, because that money we also need in order to fulfill our requirements, right? In order to fulfill our requirements we also need that money, and if we are printing that money and we are also using that money, right, then whenever we have a need we are going to print that money indiscriminately, and overprinting is going to decrease the value of that money. So we should not have an authority to print that money. That authority must be with someone who is looking for country's economy, not for the day's government. Who is looking for country's economy, not for the day's government. Right? So RBI is printing and managing the rupee in India for Indian economy, not for Narendra Modi's government, right? Even if government want, they can do that thing, right? They can take the authority from the Reserve Bank of India. They have this power. They have this power. But despite knowing that, they are not going to do that, because they know that if we are going to take this power in our hand, it is going to be ultimately disaster for us, because we do not understand when how much is sufficient. We always want to rule, in order to be get selected or elected we are going to do lot of things which is not good for the economy. The overprinting of money is not required. Even you can see that few days back Supreme Court said that the freebies must be stopped. The freebies must be stopped. So context was what? Because of lot of freebies announced by these governments, right? Various government, not a particular political party. Every political party, every government, right? They announce these things. Just imagine if the government itself is going to print that money and to in order to get elected, right, what they can offer, that is beyond imagination, and it is going to completely destruct the Indian economy or any country's economy. So this is why it is a kind of universal phenomena all over the world, right? No government take the responsibility of management of a currency or money in its country, and they have created an independent authority which look from the broader perspective of country's economy overall rather than day's government requirement. Though whenever the day's government is going to make any requirement or any kind of uh, request, they will consider, but they will consider from the country's economy, not for the just a day of the government's problem, right? So this is why an independent which cannot be over influenced or too much influenced by the government. So this is why an independent authority is required for controlling the money supply. Similarly, an independent authority is required for controlling the inflation. So all over the world, there is a central bank which controls the money supply. At the same time, they also responsible for controlling the inflation, whether it is India or it is USA or it is Britain or it is any significant country, right? In fact, our beloved neighbor Pakistan, right? Just let you know the the independence our central bank have in India since its inception, right? And everybody know that when RBI was established, it was working a bank, central bank for India as well as Pakistan. Even after independence, RBI was quietly working as a central bank for the Pakistan also. But Pakistan started blaming government of India ki no, RBI is doing some partialities and we are going to have our own separate central bank, that is State Bank of Pakistan, that is their central bank. If you closely look, the things happened in last 5 to 7 years in Pakistan, especially last 3 4 years. Government have lot of say in the central bank's functioning in Pakistan. State Bank of Pakistan's functioning, if you will closely see, they have too much say, right? They have too much say and they can easily ignore the advice of whom? Their central bank, right? And that converted into the disaster. And one more thing, you know why IMF is not releasing that money? One of the condition in that is provide more autonomy to your central bank, especially in terms of monetary management, debt management. Provide more independence. Government should not override the central bank's power how much money should be in the economy. This is one of the fundamental demand by the IMF in the case of Pakistan. So all over the world where we have seen troublesome economies, if you will carefully see the relation between the government and central bank, you will find that the government have tried to overpower the independence of a central bank, and that resulted into the disaster. Now some people say that, sir, if government know that, why they do? The thing is, सिगरेट पीना स्वास्थ्य के लिए हानिकारक है. Smoking is injurious to the health. Everybody know that, but still lot of people will smoke, right? So it's all about ki I don't want to live for 90 years or 100 years. Whatever life I have, I want to enjoy that life. Who cares when I'll die, right? So there are the people who are in the power and they just want to make sure that ki, till then I'm in the power, I should enjoy each and everything. Who the hell is going to rule over the country after I'm going to die? I don't care, but I want to remain in the power till then I'm alive, right? So such kind of the attitude of the people are going to create a big problem. Fine. So this is why we have unstable economies also, where the central bank do not have a proper autonomy, right? So any part of the world where central bank have a commanding authority to control the inflation. Okay, commanding authority to control the inflation, automatically they have commanding authority to control the money supply, right? So this money supply and the authority of central bank is coterminous. How you can find ki how central bank is powerful, right? Not just able to print the currency, how central banks have an ability, what kind of the power government has given through the law to the central bank in order to control the inflation. That reflects the power of the central bank, right? In overall terms, whether it is a Bank of England or RBI or Federal Reserve, right? Or in Germany or in any part of the country, it is quietly reflected. So I hope you understand the relation between inflation, money supply, central bank, and why government do not control the inflation, why government do not control the money supply, why there is a need of central bank, why central bank have to control the inflation. I hope you got the answer of all these questions. If you got the answer, if you have any doubt, please immediately make a comment so that I'll answer, then I will proceed further. Nidhi is asking for Telegram link. Which Telegram link you want? Any doubt? Your silence always scared me. Please, please tell me so that I will be in a peace. Otherwise, I am a little bit worried. Are you not getting my point? What is happening? Okay. So, see, a lot of literature is already available, types of inflation and all these things. So, before going to that, I just want to discuss further how inflation impacts, right? So, I have just mentioned here the impact of inflation, right? The impact of inflation. But before moving that impact of inflation, I just explained you कि who try to control the inflation. It is government or some other agency or independent agency. So I have explained कि there must be a proper independent agency, and that independent agency should be responsible for controlling the inflation. Right now, let's see how inflation can impact. Right. So inflation can impact poor people, middle class, and rich. Right. So if you will see the distribution of a population of any country and income, right? Population and income. So you can easily find that most part of the population either comes under what? Poor or middle class, right? So if it is a developed country, there will be less amount of poor population, huge size of middle class, and there are few rich people, like 20% rich people here, 70% what? Middle class, 10% poor, or even less than 10%. If it is like country like India, where middle class is rising, but still somewhere around 25 to 30% population is still poor, right? And few, like 2 to 4% population is rich population, and rest of the thing is what? The kind of middle class, right? So the thing is, when inflation is going to be out of control, it is going to hit very hard this section of population, then this section of population, middle class and poor people. They are going to be hit very hard in terms of both their consumption as well as saving, right? So consumption and saving is going to be severely impacted of especially poor people and middle class people, right? So this inflation is going, as I told you, ki poor people and middle class is going to be hit very hard by this factor of inflation. So sometimes inflation play a decisive role at the time of election, until unless there is other issue, right? Like for example, in Britain right now, the race for the prime minister, Indian origin person, and the British lady, they are fighting for what? Leadership role. And you know that what is the main difference? Indian origin person is not very keen. He is not very keen in order to do many things for the purpose of what? For the purpose of providing so much relaxation to the people. In fact, what he want to control the inflation. That's why he is not very keen to give lot of tax soaps and all other things. He want to keep control inflation tightly, right? Whereas the other leader, she is a proper political leader, and she is saying that, I'll provide lot of things. And finally, Mr. Rishi find that, I also have to these go for these things. So ultimately, he understood कि if you are not going to take care of poor and middle class specifically, then maybe you are not able to rule one thing, right? One problem. So this is why governments are very sensitive with respect to the inflation related issues. One thing. Another thing, from the overall point of view of economy, as this is the largest section of any country's population, either middle class or poor people or both combinedly, they are the largest part of population. So country's GDP and country's gross savings, that also depends upon what? Also depends upon middle and poor class. Fine. So that inflation is going to impact overall GDP, country's gross savings. So this is why impact of inflation is going to be high on what? Country's GDP, country's overall ability to save, employment level, all these things. Socioeconomic indicators are also going to be get impacted. If people are not, poor people specifically, if they are not able to fulfill their food requirements, how they are going to send their kids for the schooling, right? So it is also create a problem at social level, right? So this is why inflation hit hard consumption as well as savings. So this is why we must take inflation under the control. Fine. Now question arises ki what should be the Lakshman Rekha? What should be the Lakshman Rekha? Like ki what percentage of inflation is okay and what percentage of inflation is not okay. So countries like India, they feel that ki 4 to 6% inflation is okay for them, whereas country like US, they feel that 2 to 3% inflation is okay for them. Why, I'll explain you, but not right now, later. But overall, if you will see, 6 to 7% inflation is a kind of Lakshman Rekha. Beyond that, that inflation is not acceptable in any part of the world, whether it is developed country or developing country, right? In fact, for developed country, Lakshman Rekha is somewhere around 4.5 or 5% inflation, whereas for developing countries, it is 7% kind of the inflation. That is a kind of line which should not be breached. Okay, okay. Right. So there must be a kind of inflation related line. Okay. So this is how basically inflation impact. But apart from this consumption and saving, inflation also impact our currency, especially with respect to foreign currencies. How inflation impact our currency with respect to the foreign currency, right? I will explain, right? I'll explain ki how this inflation is going to impact our currency with respect to foreign currency. I will explain this thing in the detail. So but just get an overall picture ki inflation is a kind of thing which impact economy not only at internal level but also at external level also, right? Internal level and external level, at both level, that is going to impact. Fine. Now from here, from this point, the discussion is going to be more technical in the nature. It is going to be more technical in the nature. So my humble request to all of you, please go through your course, Crack Grade B course. There is an inflation related PDFs are there. Just one go through. Even if you are not able to get each and everything, don't worry. Just read once. Just have a brief reading, right? So once you will have a brief reading, you are going to find some certain points, certain things which is not going to be understood by you, right? And that is going to create some curiosity in your mind. and I'll explain all those things, right? But because from here the nature of discussion is going to be more technical in the nature, so at least one reading is required so that you can grab and understand all those points. Like, I just explained the fundamental today, but now the how the inflation is going to impact foreign currency, means Indian rupee depreciation, inflation and Indian rupees depreciation, and how it is going to impact our consumption, savings, all these things, government policies, right? How this inflation, right, how this inflation is responsible for rise in the GDP, sorry, GST collection, how the inflation has impacted on the rise of what, rise of the GST collection. Government has given the data in today's newspaper, and government has mentioned that there is a mop up in the GST. So inflation also increased the tax collection. But is it good or not? For all these things, we need some basic understanding, and I do not want to proceed without that. Right. So deliberately, I have decided that I'll give you this point, and from here I'll request you go through the notes at Crack Grade B portal, right? In your application, go through, just please have a reading, once reading, nothing else, right? Just read it. If you're not able to get it, don't worry, I'll explain. But read it so that when tomorrow I'll start the session, I'll cover all those things and you are able to understand. And one more thing, just want a suggestion from all of you. If I'll increase the time from 1 to 1.5 hour, is it okay for all of you? If anybody have kind of apprehension, right? Because I was thinking about 2 hours, but 2 hours is going to be too much, right? 2 hours is going to be too much, but I think 1.5 hour you can manage, and if you can manage, it will be good for you, right? And for me, why it's going to be good for me, because my lectures are like, I'll start at particular point and I always love to finish at that particular point, so that next lecture will be constructed in the same manner. So for me is also going to be more satisfactory kind of the thing, right? सीधे सीधे यार, means straightforward. I'm a kind of person who love to give a concrete kind of the lecture in 1.5 hour or 2 hour, 2.5 hour, 3 hour. I love that. But I know in this way of teaching, more than 1.5 hour is going to be very problematic, right? Very problematic for you guys, right? So if it is possible, please try to cooperate for 1.5 hour, right? Still, if somebody have a issue, they can directly drop a message to Ashok sir, right? I will talk to him. If people have their reservation, I'll stick to 1 hour only. If they are comfortable with 1.5 hour, then I'll go for 1.5 hour from tomorrow itself, right? So both people who agreed with that thing, please tell us, right? Those who disagree with that thing, please also tell us, so that we can come to the concrete solution. Okay. So Raj, Panna, Nidhi, everyone, please let me know, huh? So tomorrow I'll explain the relation of inflation with all these things. There is another concept, very interesting concept. There is an international trilemma, right? There is a dilemma, there is a trilemma, right? Means how the inflation, foreign exchange, fiscal policy, right? Monetary policy, fiscal policy, exchange rate. Monetary policy, fiscal policy, and exchange rate. How these three things work in tandem, right? How they impact each other. If you will get the inflation, how inflation impact fiscal policy, how inflation impact this exchange rate, then it is very easy for you to get how in exchange rate is going to impact inflation, means monetary policy and fiscal policy. How fiscal policy have an impact on monetary policy, that is inflation or the price rise, right? So inflation is what? Inflation is a tip of iceberg, right? But that tip of iceberg is very important in order to understand the entire iceberg, right? So we will go for tomorrow, not today. Okay. And be active in chat, yaar. Means I love once you are going to say yes or no. I am a kind of very interactive kind of the person. I love to give this thing in person, but in that way it is not possible. So it will be good if you are going to let me know ki yes, no, such kind of the comment. As means for me it's very appreciating kind of the thing. Ki I'll get further pumped up. Ki okay, go fatafat, go for more. Okay, so if you'll see, means almost it is 9:45, so we went for 1 hour 15 minutes, so 1 hour 30 minutes. I think it is going to be quite interesting, plus a good learning session. Okay, so my humble request, please cooperate with me, so I'll give you more and more understanding and knowledge so that you can clear this exam, right? So we'll start tomorrow, either 8 or 8:30. You will get a message, and if everyone is fine, we will go for 1.5 hours. Okay. So thank you for today. If you have any question, please let me know. Otherwise, I will wind up the session right now. Thank you, Raj. So okay, I'm winding up the session for today. We'll start tomorrow at same time, 8 or 8 means 8:30, and we will go for as per what you'll decide. Okay. Okay then. Good night to all of you. See you tomorrow.